Aș vrea să încep prin a marca faptul că anul 2026 este un an special pentru PwC în România. Împlinim 35 de ani. Acum 35 de ani, un grup mic de persoane au înființat un birou de consultanță la București, la un an de zile de la căderea comunismului, într-o perioadă în care mediul de afaceri se construia de la zero. Practic, nimeni nu știa ce va urma. 3 decenii și jumătate în care am fost alături de clienții noștri, prin anii de tranziție, prin anii de aderare la Uniunea Europeană, prin criza financiară, printr-o pandemie globală și, în momentul de față, prin ceea ce ar putea să fie cea mai importantă schimbare tehnologică de pe parcursul vieților noastre. Astăzi, PwC Romania este una dintre cele mai cunoscute organizații de consultanță din România, iar această sală este plină de lideri care, iată, din nou, parcurg un moment marcat de incertitudine. Bine ați venit la prima ediție a PwC Romania Technology Summit. Ne bucurăm că sunteți alături de noi. Am crezut dintotdeauna că rolul nostru nu este doar de a oferi consultanță, ci și de a-i ajuta pe clienți să modeleze ceea ce urmează. Această convingere ne-a făcut să organizăm acest eveniment. Astăzi o să discutăm despre tehnologie și încercăm să-i dăm o altă dimensiune. Când am terminat facultatea și mi-am început cariera ca și programator, știam foarte concret ceea ce poate să facă tehnologia sau ce nu poate să facă. Astăzi, ceea ce se întâmplă astăzi este fundamental diferit. Inteligența artificială generativă nu este doar o versiune mai puternică a instrumentelor pe care le aveam deja. Lucrurile care se întâmplă azi, ceea ce poate face tehnologia este semnificativ diferit. Dacă ne gândim de la execuția de instrucțiuni, la generarea de conținut, la raționament și mai nou la acțiunea autonomă, ne dăm seama că ritmul schimbării este major. Iar schimbarea este una accelerată. Ceea ce vedeți pe ecran este doar un simplu exemplu prin care am vrut să ilustrez cât de mult accelerează schimbarea tehnologică în prezent. Instagram a avut nevoie de 2 ani și jumătate pentru a atinge 100 de milioane de utilizatori, iar OpenAI, pentru a atinge același lucru, a avut nevoie doar de 2 luni. Această schimbare accelerată este cea care determină organizațiile să se transforme, să fie diferite. Și acest lucru creează o provocare pentru toți liderii din această sală, o provocare foarte clară și urgentă. Și nu vorbim despre o provocare tehnologică, vorbim despre o provocare de leadership, pentru că întrebarea care se pune nu este dacă vom investi în AI, pentru că va fi nevoie, ci dacă luăm decizii cu viteza care este necesară în acest moment, dacă reușim să construim organizații care sunt suficient de puternice și reziliente ca să absoarbă următorul val de schimbare și pe cel care urmează după el. Despre asta vrem să discutăm astăzi. Și pentru a porni discuția, ne-am gândit să ilustrăm doar prin câțiva indicatori cheie situația actuală din România. Cercetările și studiile pe care le facem în mod constant ne dau câteva puncte de plecare. Dacă vorbim despre adopția tehnologiei de cloud în România, vedem că lucrurile s-au îmbunătățit, deși suntem în continuare sub media țărilor din Europa Centrală și de Est și semnificativ sub media țărilor precum Polonia. În ceea ce privește adopția sistemelor bazate pe inteligența artificială, lucrurile stau diferit. Situația e destul de clară, iar un studiu pe care urmează să-l lansăm în cursul lunii mai ne arată că doar 2% din respondenții companiilor din România au declarat că dețin o strategie completă aprobată, care are și indicatori pentru măsurarea beneficiilor aduse de inteligența artificială. Și poate și mai relevant este faptul că aproape 80% din respondenți ne-au semnalat că nu folosesc sisteme bazate pe AI pentru luarea deciziilor. Barierele principale sunt, cred, clasice. Dificultăți în măsurarea beneficiilor investițiilor făcute, lipsa de personal calificat și constrângeri bugetare. Dar eu cred că liderii din această sală pot surmonta aceste bariere și pot transforma acest lucru într-o oportunitate, deoarece organizațiile care vor trece din faza de experimentare în care ne găsim astăzi, la faza de execuție și adoptare a tehnologiilor bazate pe AI, nu numai că au oportunitatea de a recupera decalajul, dar ar putea să fie și printre lideri în România. Ca urmare, agenda de astăzi a fost special construită în acest context și vom porni cu un discurs susținut de Lilia, Christofi, unde vom afla strategia companiilor și liderilor care transformă tehnologia în valoare. Continuăm ulterior cu un panel de invitați din zona practică, în care vom afla de la liderul Raiffeisen Bank, de la un antreprenor, Sergiu Neguț, care a înființat o companie recunoscută pe plan internațional, de la Mihai Bordeanu, liderul Dacia, una dintre cele mai de succes branduri auto din Europa și nu numai, și, nu în ultimul rând, de la Ionut Sas, reprezentant al UiPath, companie care a pus automatizarea pe harta globală. Acești invitați nu sunt teoreticieni, sunt practicieni. Apoi continuăm cu o prezentare susținută de Barbara de Cherova, președinte în cadrul Microsoft. Microsoft, o companie de tehnologie globală, care îl va avea ca invitat pe George Călinescu, CFO al Băncii Transilvania. Iar la final, probabil ați văzut, avem câteva echipe de liceeni care organizează un concurs de robotică și îi vom invita pe capitanii acestor echipe pe scenă să aibă un scurt dialog cu noi și să ne spună despre experiența lor în acest sens. Și acum, Lilia, înainte de a-ți da cuvântul și de a te invita pe scenă, am vrut ca acest eveniment să fie puțin special și am invitat un coleg. Doamnelor și domnilor, acesta este cel mai nou coleg al nostru. Nu are încă o adresă de e-mail PwC, dar lucrăm la asta. Lucrează non-stop, nu are nevoie de concediu și are diplomă în informatică. Numele lui este Byte. Și am pregătit o scurtă demonstrație pentru dumneavoastră ca să vedeți cât de ușor este lucru cu AI. Byte, șezi. Excelent. Byte, sus. Aplauze, mulțumim. Și acum, ca să vedeți că lucrurile legate de AI sunt interesante, aș vrea să-l întreb pe Byte care este cel mai mare risc al adopției tehnologiei AI. Exact. După cum vedeți, tehnologia AI, ce ne-a învățat Byte în 30 de secunde? Tehnologia AI va face lucruri care ne vor surprinde plăcut, lucruri pe care acum 5 ani le credeam imposibile. În al doilea rând, tehnologia AI va face și lucruri pe care nu i le-ați cerut, la momente de timp pe care nu le-ați planificat și în moduri pe care nu le înțelegeți complet. Ca urmare, întrebarea mea pentru liderii din această sală este dacă veți fi cei care veți lucra cu sisteme AI, pentru asta răspunsul este da. Dar întrebarea principală este dacă veți fi cei care le-au antrenat, care le-au guvernat, le-au înțeles sau veți fi cei care veți fi surprinși de acestea? Acum Byte va merge la locul lui pentru că a fost instruit să nu participe la paneluri, deoarece nu suntem siguri că nu va încerca să răspundă la întrebări. Și cu această ocazie aș vrea să o invit pe Lilia Christofi pentru a începe agenda acestui eveniment cu primul discurs.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me in Romania. This morning arrived last night, unfortunately with a little bit of rain. It's really nice to see the robotics working on stage. I would say I'm waiting quite impatiently of getting humanoids and having them accompany me at work as well. Unfortunately, our regulations at the moment in the UK don't allow for actually commercial use of robotics in the homes just yet. But this is coming, right? And we can see in Asia marathons and all these things running. More importantly, I think at this point we are really considering how we use AI within our organizations to empower our people. And this will change. There's a lot of ethics and consideration to be done as part of these kinds of considerations. It's not the interaction that is void of whether it is within a humanoid or whether it's in a chatbot or a colleague assistant. And we need to talk about this in a little bit more serious sort of dialogue. As you can see, I think the one thing that I want to really highlight here is that organizations are really struggling to provide the business cases associated with the use of AI. It is challenging for various reasons. When we started about a year and a half ago, the conversation was very much anchored about productivity. What does it mean in terms of tool set for our people to use? And more recently, probably over the last 9 months, does that mean that we're replacing people within the workforce with the tools that we are putting in place? Let's be honest, we've had these conversations quite some time ago when we were talking about robotic process automation. This is no different today to that, but it's much more sophisticated and it's less predictable. And we still have hallucination and we have operational resilience issues, and this tech is quite new. I know it's been around for 3 years. I know ChatGPT has been used for a number of years. But when you talk about sophisticated AI engineering use cases, they are not always straightforward to implement, and the skill set within the environment is actually limited to be able to build agentic, robust systems that will give you predictable answers every time. So the concentration of what we are seeing and what is coming from some of the surveys we did a jobs barometer in 2025, we've done an agent survey, and we've done predictions. What we are seeing is that actually the more important consideration here about AI is about its revenue generation. It's not about its productivity. And if you don't start with the right metrics and the right boldness and ambition and value and the discussions from the top, then the likelihood of the outcome of the AI program is going to fail, quite frankly. And so it's really important that we are driving the strategy from the top down. So that means the CEOs, the COOs, the CIOs, all of the C-suite need to come together and be aligned across the organization when we are looking at an AI transformation. An AI transformation, and you would have heard this many times, and I cannot stress it enough, is a business transformation process. It is not a technology program. If it's a technology program, it fails. That's the bottom line. So if we then move into what is Romania versus the rest of the world. So I work across 17 territories. In those 17 territories, I see variation in the use of AI. Romania, as its very inception, as you would have seen from Gabriel's speech around where you are in terms of implementation and use of AI. When you look at the UK market in comparison, you will see that all the top organizations, including startups, are in large AI scale transformations. They have been through the experimentation phase. They're now thinking how to reuse AI across the different business areas, and the way that we do that is in the form of blueprints. It means we build once and we reuse the implementation of that technology across different data sets in different functions. And this is important because to build AI is expensive. And if you don't get alignment across the business, you're making the risk department's job and regulatory challenges that much harder. Why? Let me give you an example. When you look at cloud, when we did cloud migrations, we very much thought about the risk profile of moving to cloud. We thought about the controls that we need to put in place in order to make sure that we have the right operational resilience and robustness in business continuity for the move to cloud. We did the same for RPA. But if we don't design this at an enterprise architecture level, what you will have is CISO, which is cybersecurity team, having their own controls, cloud having their own controls, the AI team having their own controls, data having their own controls, model validation having their own controls in the CRO function. That means you have duplication of controls 5-fold before you even get to the business controls across an organization. Can you imagine the cost in managing those controls? Can you imagine where the responsibility lies across those different functional areas? This is the very need and reason why the alignment needs to happen across those different functional areas to come together in what we call a control engineering tower, to standardize and to make sure that the lexicon and understanding behind those controls for the implementation to assure that we are doing the right things for scale are in place. And that's why experimentation moving to scale is so hard to do, because we have to unnaturally break the boundaries between functions within organizations to work together more cohesively where they've worked autonomously on their own to date. So that is why it's a challenge, and that's why we are only seeing the transformation happening right now. Now, there has been a massive move and a lot of consideration done for agentic. So we are no longer talking generative AI across most regions, and in fact, I will be as bold enough to say that SAP, Oracle, with respect to ERP implementations and platforms, are now having conversations with us how to use AI code-generating tools to rewrite all of their platforms in agentic. So this is not something that organizations need to recognize as a risk, that the whole technology landscape is changing. The actual platform providers are noticing this as a risk as part of their existence in the ecosystem. And I think this is an important consideration for you, because if you think about upgrades you've had to do to mainframe or upgrades you have had to do to platforms, this will be a major step change in a number of years that you will need to consider to do as part of your organizational architectural construct. Okay, so what do we see? We see that you're 18 to 24 months behind. What are you going to do? You're going to leapfrog. I think that is the best. And the best way to learn AI is by implementing and doing. It's not about watching some courses online, right? So we all have an action plan. Right. Now, what are some of the use cases that are quite successful? A couple of years ago, within some of the other countries, what we've seen is that regulatory compliance acceleration is possible through agentic services. We are working with global banks today to be able to ingest all policies and regulation across all territories and be able to create obligations registers where we can monitor the organizational effectiveness against those regulations and controls. So these are systems that have been implemented not only by PwC, but frankly quite widely distributed across the software vendors. We see a very big implementation with regards to customer onboarding, everything to do with financial crime, looking at KYC, looking at transactions. These are definitely the areas where you can start quite comfortably, and usually the data within those areas is quite well articulated and governed, so there are safe use cases to begin with. And we have quite significant partnerships in this space. Quantexa is one of our partners. We work very closely on doing innovation with them. We also work with NICE, Actimize, etc. So we are moving forward with partners in the space, as well as building proprietary extensions from a PwC perspective here. Then we talk about hyper-personalization. If you don't have the right foundational aspects in place with regards to your data estate typically has duplications. and challenges associated with being able to find relationships across from your customers. If you have family accounts, you don't know who's related to who, etc. These insights can only be possible if you put the data capability foundations in place. So there is some work to be done before you can venture out in doing hyper-personalization and customer-related use cases. In the EU right now, Germany, Holland, Belgium, UK, Sweden, Norway are already implementing large additions to their customer contact centers to replace interactions with using agent assist for customers. So it means customers are self-serving completely, talking to agentic services, voices that sound much like yours and mine, and you wouldn't even know if it was a robot or a human. And these are becoming global phenomenon, so much so that it's not just about customer servicing, it's also about sales. So in the UK, if you were living in the UK today, like me, you'd be getting a whole bunch of calls from non-humans going, do you want to buy this, or have you considered that? And I tend to block them, I have to admit. But there are these calls coming through right now from non-humans. So we are moving into the sales space around that. So these are the big use cases. In Europe, in Eastern Europe, the considerations around some of the big banks have been how do we replace agentic services or place agentic services in mortgage and loan workflows and value chains. So this is something that we will see in the next 12 months being quite dominant in terms of approvals and workflows and ingestion of documentation from customers and being able to approve loans much the way that we did straight-through processing with automation, but actually have a little bit of a better experience regarding interacting with a bank in this way and getting a bit more hyper-personalization, not just from the contact point of view, but around the product that they are being offered. Right. Moving on, what is hype and what is not hype? Okay, the reality is, at the moment, most countries do not feel comfortable with having fully autonomous workflows for every workflow. However, there is this fallacy in concept that you need to have human in the loop for every process. This is not right, because you will never get the productivity gains that your organizations are looking at, and you will never be able to provide different revenue streams and services if you are relying on human in the loop. Because that means you still have the FTE doing that work. You still have them making those decisions. You will make an incremental change which is not really going to be significantly changing your underlying profit and loss around those individuals. So what we say is when you build agentic services, you should build human above the loop. And that is why the control tower that I was talking about earlier is super important. Because what you're doing is you're managing by exception. You're managing the outliers. You're managing the escalations. You're understanding the signals of your organization at every level with every function, so you know what you need to do. And you have more strategic and value-add oversight on that process, not in the process. And let me tell you, and it's probably a scary fact, but the process almost doesn't matter anymore. The outcome does. So when you build AI, you don't go and look at your process, and you don't go look at your system. You look at what you want to produce, what you want to be in the environment, and what you want to give your client. And that is the starting point. When you get that starting point and you build backwards, that's when you build good systems. You have the opportunity to do that today. This opportunity will not come again. The last opportunity like this was in the 1970s. So use it. Use it as an excuse to accelerate and change your position in the environment as an industry and as sectors, and reinvent yourself and make sure that you have a place in tomorrow's society and future. Yeah? Gen AI has always this ability to tell you you're right, even when you're wrong. So you have to be quite deterministic in certain perspectives. I see a lot of organizations doing the wrong thing by putting AI everywhere. AI is a probabilistic model. AI does not belong everywhere. Sometimes we're using the wrong use cases for AI. ML, machine learning, is still very important, If you want to make sure that you're always giving a right answer, make sure you're putting the right model, make sure you're putting the right technology in the right space. And in some cases, you don't need AI, you just need automation. Yeah, so that is why the relationships with some of the big providers is important, because you need to understand how to apply the technology in the right thing. Yesterday, I heard from one of my customers, he said, we need to be able to deploy blueprints very easily and propagate them through the software development lifecycle extremely easily, and it's got to be consistent in the way we give access, control, and all these things. And I turned around and said, yes, you're right, we have to do that. But that's infrastructure as code, that's not AI. Those blueprints are cloud blueprints. They're about containerization, it's not AI. And then she paused for a second and she said, actually, you're right, but we still need that. And I said, yes, you do. And that's why the learning from the journey to the cloud is important, because it's an important step to help you with deploying AI in the right way. So we're not replacing human judgment, but we are augmenting it. Some of the biggest use cases I'll show you in a second are quite phenomenal on what it can do to enhance that human judgment. And I think that's where the focus should really lie. Okay. So what I can say, and I will leave you with this statistic on the percentages, 73% of executives that have taken our survey, and we're talking hundreds of executives have taken our survey, over 500, said that AI agents will deliver significant competitive advantage. Before I go into the use case, I do want to say to you that actually one of my clients is a pension provider, a very large pension provider in the UK. He was the CFO of the company. He came to me one day and he said, Lilia, if we don't implement AI and agentic services or even generative AI in our investment business, our pensioners will not be able to actually cater for the environmental impacts that are happening to their pensions. It's likely that we are competing with private equity, private credit, other institutions who are actually investing significantly in using analytical AI to be able to make decisions around investments, and we will not be able to compete. We are not going to be able to provide the right outcomes, and we will lose our customer base. This is why I want to implement it. That is detrimental, or could have been a detrimental decision that he would have not been able to make for his business. He made that decision in order to ensure the longevity of his organization. He didn't make that decision so that he could have some productivity uplift in his team. It was something he saw as being a significant problem and a challenge for his future longevity in the market. And that's the kind of use cases you want to be investing in. Summarization comes out of the box. We all talk about summarization of documents. That's not where you're going to get your differentiating aspect of being relevant in the market, yeah? So let's talk about this. So we built an intelligence hub. It has been supported by some of the largest hyperscalers. Microsoft is involved with us. We are supported also by Google in the implementation of the intelligence hub. It is a very, very exciting development that we have made. Basically, what it does is, it is a pattern. I always say, in any institution, you need 3 archetypes. One archetype is about intelligence on orchestrating tasks, okay? Second archetype is being able to derive intelligence from any number of sources. Third-party data sources, your own institutional knowledge, whatever it can be. And the fourth archetype is being able to create headless workflows that you can enable from anywhere and reuse them across the business anywhere. So these are the 3 archetypes. If you build these 3 archetypes with your control tower that we talked about, you can pretty much agentify the whole institution. You don't need to build use case, you need to build blueprints. These are the 3 archetypes, these are the 3 blueprints. Intelligence Hub is one of those. It ingests a variety of data sources, from ERP signals to market intelligence data that's coming from Bloomberg or any sources that you can think of in the market. And it is taking that and then it's relaying it to particular entities. Let's say you want to know how a particular company is faring today. You will consider the annual statements, but you'll also consider their current performance. You will look at their supply chain risks. So there's a lot of information that you could be digesting to assess performance, okay? So this tool that we've built is able to do credit analysis, due diligence, ESG reporting, you name it. So what we are saying is one facility to cover multiple use cases, yeah? That's the important bit. To be able to do this is not just AI. Data plays a very big role, the way we organize the data. And there is a concept called ontologies. How many of you have heard of Palantir? A fair few. Palantir made a significant amount of money on the basis of building industry ontologies. Yeah? These ontologies are basically knowledge frameworks of how they look at data within a particular industry to be able to dissect it. What we are doing is we are doing that, but we are doing it dynamically. Meaning, if you want to add additional intelligence and additional context, you can reshape the whole knowledge framework so that you can get the outcome that you want. Yeah? So, with that, I'm hoping the video will play. But here you will see that we are actually entering into the platform, and it is asking the question of, do a profitability analysis on Energizer. It's a simple question, but it's not a simple answer, right? Because in this question, you don't know if Energizer is actually a company or a person or what it is, right? So first we need to understand the semantics of what it's doing. So the semantic agent will have a look at that and distinguish and find what the company is and understand what performance analysis means. Because it depends on the person asking the question. If I'm a CFO asking the performance, I'll be looking at certain equations. If I'm a risk officer, I might be looking at a completely different lens. So I have to assess what it is that I'm asking. So the semantic agent is going there and it goes, okay, profitability assessment, that is what you're asking. You're asking for performance, but I think based on the user type that's asked, it's got to do with profitability. Is that correct? Yes, it's correct. Okay, so then I will make sure that I find the right organization. Is this the organization you're looking for? Yes, it is. So another agent has determined that. Now I'm going to my ontology and I'm going, okay, based on the sector that this company is in, what are the kind of performance measures and metrics that I need to look up in terms of equations to actually be able to give you the performance assessment and analysis of that organization in terms of profitability. So now it's actually going through the ontology and it's finding, okay, net income versus equity, it's pulled up. You will not see this. This is back-end. I'm showing you a little bit of a snippet of what's happening on the back-end when you ask these agents questions. So it's pulled out all the formulas it needs to consider in order to be able to generate you the actual output and the file. Yeah? And then the data agent will go and fetch the data. Why? Because some of this data is live and it's real time, and some of this data is static. And it's important to include the real time because, things change. Maybe an organization can go bust in a day. You don't know. Supply chain affects us so much. Right, so now it's come back. 2024 it did this, 2023 it did this, 2022 it did this. So now it's starting to look at the trending. What's happened? It will then start inferring context. Why has this changed? And so on, and be able to give you a detailed view. And now you can just say, give me a counterparty analysis. How many of you use counterparty analysis within your organizations? I bet a lot, yeah? This would have taken hours to do. It is taking a few minutes to do with agents. So then your people can focus on the right things. Not to fetch the data, but to actually infer additional value creation on top of it. And so that is what we've been able to achieve, and we are able to achieve that real time. It is quite complex, but it's here, okay? And as I said, Quantexa is one of the organizations we are working, and it's part of the back end to be able to do the analysis with. So, what did we cover? Just to summarize, we covered that we need to be very clear around the agent scenarios of the value creation that we want to do. We need to make sure that we have institutional knowledge and relationships across all the data and the insights that we want to generate within an organization. We need to build ontology models, which are your knowledge graphs that give you that view of how to assess certain questions. And we need to build AI in terms of blueprints that are reusable and concentrated within agentic platforms. And we are not implementing AI use cases, but we are actually implementing the change of technology capability within our organization in a concentrated technology platform, right? And that means that that same use case that you saw before, I can now think about how to build a command center for my COO, for my CRO, from my CISO, etc., to be able to monitor its performance and its ability to meet regulatory requirements. That's why the concentration is very important. Please remember this, because it will prohibit you from being able to move to enterprise scale if you don't do that. Remember I said the Regulatory Compliance Accelerator? I'm going to play a very quick video so you can see what that looks like and what it can do, just so you can see where you can start in terms of the organization on building that control engineering tower from the CRO function point of view.
Introducing the Regulatory Compliance Accelerator, your fast track to staying compliant and confident. Regulatory requirements are constantly evolving. Manual tracking and fragmented processes can lead to delays, errors, and costly penalties. Regulatory Compliance Accelerator is PwC's generative AI-powered solution, designed to transform how financial institutions manage and demonstrate compliance. It automates the end-to-end regulatory traceability journey, from understanding obligations to mapping them against policies, controls, and processes, providing a clear, auditable line of sight across the compliance lifecycle. The Regulatory Compliance Accelerator uses GenAI and Agentic AI to extract, prioritize, and map regulatory obligations to policies, controls, and risk themes, delivering end-to-end traceability. Combining PwC's regulatory expertise with advanced AI, RCA enables firms to instantly interpret obligations from regulatory text, dynamically map them to controls, processes, and policies, detect gaps, optimize frameworks, and monitor compliance in real time. RCA automates workflows, centralizes documentation, and gives organizations real-time compliance visibility with confidence and scalability. Here's how it works. Automated monitoring. Stay ahead with alerts on regulatory changes. Smart templates. Quickly generate compliant reports and filings. Audit-ready records. Maintain a single source of truth for all compliance activities. RCA achieves significant reduction in manual effort and compliance costs, leads to faster response times and greater agility, and provides a unified front-to-back view of the risk and control environment, enhancing auditability. RCA is already in production for one of the FS clients in the UK. Accelerate compliance today.
So when I started this program, I actually angered a lot of the PwC partners because I was in Microsoft, I was head of banking at the time, and I said, if we don't do this, we're going to have a problem with the regulators in the future. And thankfully, they heard my call for action, and we worked very closely with Microsoft to build this capability. Most people think that you can just upload a file in ChatGPT and you can say, create me the obligations out of that file. It doesn't work quite like that, unfortunately. Okay? Language and structure of the document has to be understood for the right extraction. We need to know for an organization which obligations have to be combined, which have to be left on their own, and so on. We're able to achieve the ability to translate and interpret policies and regulations above 93%. That's more than can be said for most humans. Organizations that I've worked in, they have significant gaps in meeting obligations they were not even aware of. Most large global organizations that I'm working with have more than 25% gaps in understanding of policies and regulation. This is significant risk exposure. So you're not doing this for revenue, but you are doing this to make sure that you are compliant and that you don't have any problems and that everything that you need to know is exposed. Right. So none of it is possible if we don't make sure that we are compliant and adherent from an ethical point of view. I often say that you can't deliver AI transformations without AI trust. It's really important that we build a very clear framework for how we are monitoring and developing the responsibility of what we're doing from an AI perspective. There are a lot of things that are not in your control. It doesn't make things easy. Couple of learnings. Number one, technology is changing every 2 weeks. You are refactoring continuously. You think Agile methodology was hard to adopt? Agile doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist. You are developing and delivering and deploying every single day. Every day, right? That's the first thing. How much human oversight can you possibly achieve with the deployment of every day? You have to build agentic services within your IT function to support this new software delivery lifecycle. It is not possible to do it in Agile. Governance oversight cannot be something that you do at the end of a sprint. It is something that you're doing every day. To remain compliant, you have to build these control loops in as part of that deployment methodology. So if you think regulation and compliance and control is an optional, it's not. You can't deliver AI without it. Let me make that very clear. And then the other thing I would say is you can't rely on committees anymore. You have to feel comfortable with feeling uncomfortable and with uncertainty, because your teams will be making their own decisions without it going to the leadership team. And you have to be able to trust your teams. It's a very big part of the transition in mindset as part of the development and the delivery of this technology. So what can I say? Make sure that you are very clear on that, and make sure that you are very clear on the level of risk you are taking with respect to innovation. And make sure that you understand that more than 40% of what you're deploying is going to be in that control tower. It's a hard reality. It's not just innovation about features. We are having to build controls and an ethical review. So before I leave the room and get told off for the time spent, I will leave you with 3 things. Number 1, is your data good enough to build on? If not, we'll probably have to have a conversation about that and what you need to bring into place for that. Which are the 3 AI areas that are going to materially change your business model is what you should focus on. I've had clients come to me with 200 to 1,000 AI use case catalogs. You're not going to deliver in the first 6 months, even 9 months, maybe even 12 months, more than 3 AI use cases if you've never, to scale and in production, of course, if you've never done this before. It takes a while to build teams. When I onboard an AI engineer into an agentic framework with agentic skills, it takes 2 to 3 months to onboard them. These are rare skills, and it's hard even to retain people like that. So that's the second thing. And then, who in your leadership team is owning this from a business perspective? Because the return on investment and the KPIs have to be owned by the business, right? So innovation starts at the heart of the business. Do not let your IT teams run off to do their own things on their own, because it just won't work. And with that, I end, and I hope that you've learned something from me today, and I'm really pleased to have been part of this with this day. Thank you, Gabriel.